Hello glue sniffers, it's time for a new project. Nothing fancy. A Panzer II in a North African scenario and a lot of action. Here we have some freehold model tracks for our tank as well as the Edward Photoed set. Those nice Tamiya figures will be the actors. This project will be done with Ammo by Mick products because they were given to me by Bine, the founder of Backtobasics, for a live workshop that I did in Ljubljana in November. The link to the workshop video is in the description. This time I'm taking inspiration from a book. I will try to recreate this scene and make it even more dramatic. And this is the result of the workshop. So let's make a slightly bigger version of that. Are we ready? Let's dig into it. I am starting this project with the scene, so I quickly put together the main parts of the Panzer II just to get an idea of its volume. I have a new fancy tool in my arsenal, the Framer 1.0. Actually, 4 pieces of stiff cardboard were put together with glue, and you probably figured out how it works, because you are smart people, right? So, there will be a rocky wall, and the tank will be crossing it. A palm tree behind the tank, and 4 soldiers moving from the back of the tank in an assault move. I marked the corners and here are the dimensions. As you can see, the qualification standards to become a diorama devil testing figure are not high. Some of those guys don't even have hands, but they are there just to see the composition. My intention was to make the terrain raise in the direction of the action, but my dear friend Ravko suggested tilting the scene also towards the viewer, because that is how old theaters were built. Whoa, next level. And this is what I came out with. Here you can see the basic lines for the shaping of the terrain. I grabbed an old kitchen knife and started cutting, following the lines first. When the lines were done, the middle part was shaped. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe to this channel. Also, be sure to turn on that bell icon so you will know when something new is happening. Thank you! Because we lose basically all the height of the scene, I quickly made some 2 cm pieces and glued them on the bottom. You want your work to stand out on those competition tables, right? Don't exaggerate. But I think that 4 or 5 centimeters should be there to make things right. It's time to fit the rocky wall into the scene. You can see how the terrain is getting more dynamic and interesting. The rock was made from plaster, and I used the Woodland Scenics silicone mold. I used PVA to glue the rock in place. Always check your progress with the main items of the diorama. We are in the desert and not on a muddy road, but still, even if passing through an arid place, the tank should leave some marks. So I made some shallow track marks. The terrain was shaped with some 40 grit sandpaper. The left corner was a bit empty, so I decided to put in another piece of rock and make a dried pond or something. Let's see how it looks. Not bad, I think. I glued a piece of balsa wood in place to make a flat bottom for the pond. And now it's time for the frame. We need the frame to be slightly higher than the styrofoam because we need some place for the modeling clay. So I put 2 mm balsa under the piece and traced the terrain on the balsa. This results in a higher edge that still follows the terrain. How smart was that, huh? For the gluing, I used a combination of double-sided tape and PVA again. The tape instantly blocks the frame and the PVA has time to cure. Always remove spillovers with a wet brush. And here we have it. Now I will show you another little trick in order to obtain a more, let's say, professional look. A lot of care went into cutting the frame following the rocks. And now it's time to blend the rocks with the frame using wall repair stucco. No visible frame edge is important if you want to trick the viewer's eyes into thinking that the scene doesn't end there. Now, let's fill the terrain with modeling clay. Das Pronto is a wonderful material. This package is at least 6 years old, but it's just fine. It's cheap, non-toxic, so basically you can eat it if you're hungry. PVA glue, water and some used brushes will be also used. Also, silicone sculpting brushes are more than welcome. I took care of the holes first. Apply some PVA to make a good bond. And then stuff some clay in. Wet the brush with water and work the clay into place. Dust can be essentially dissolved into a liquid state by adding water. As a result, you can make any consistency you want. For the flat places, the process is similar. Spread some PVA over the surface. Then, make a pancake of roughly 2 mm. Cut a 90-degree piece and put it in place. Press it firmly against the ground and make it even with the edge of the frame. Here you can see how easy it is to blend the patches with the surroundings. Just work it with wet fingers. At the end, take a soft wet brush and smooth the surface as you like. Now is the time to make the imprints of the vehicle. Not sure if I need them in the desert, but we can always cover them later. Making them later? Well, better now, I think. If you really enjoy my videos and you want me to become your personal diorama tutor, you can join my Patreon team for a small amount of money. That way, you can support me and the channel. You will get daily behind-the-scenes progress reports, you can send me your work, and you can also make wishes about future projects. Thanks to my current Patreons, you're amazing. Diorama Devil loves you. The link to the page will be in the description of this video. The result after a night of drying. Just 2 micro cracks, and I will fill them with stucco just to be sure. Let's take a look at the edge and any folds. And finally, some fine sanding to smooth things out. We must finish the frame. First, I sanded the planks with sandpaper, and then I gave the balsa some texture with a steel brush. This step depends of what do you want for the final look of the frame. And the final step of the construction is adding those seat sponges. This way, pushing the diorama around will be easier and smoother. And when you put it on the table, there is a small gap underneath it that looks, I don't know how to say it, cool, I think. Now the fun part begins. Textures. Amo by MIG acrylic paste will be the first step. Static grass turfs will follow. Then a selection of cat toilet gravel. And, in the end, some loose material. It sounds like a plan to me. You should work in manageable sections. This is a very nice acrylic paste that represents sand. You can thin it with water and it's non-toxic, so you can eat this too. Perhaps on a piece of Das Pronto. Just spread it around with a shitty stiff brush. Don't worry if it looks rough, because it has a self-leveling thing in it. Then, pick a grass turf and dip it into the paste before slapping it on the wet surface of the terrain. The turf is blended and will be glued for good. Same thing with the biggest rocks. Cat toilet gravel was passed through a series of sieves to achieve different dimensions. More dimensions means more control over the effect. The larger the objects, the more thought is required about where to place them. Too much acrylic paste here. I must blend in the excess. Before putting the rocks in place, put them on the floor to see a natural pose for them. Don't just pick them and put them on a cazzo, like the Italian would say. Medium stones. Put a few of them on and then arrange them. Small stones, a sprinkle of them. Loose material, which is a mix of fine gravel and bits of dry seagrass, also a sprinkle of them. And this is it. If you don't want to cover the track imprints, you have to thin the paste with water. Ergo, apply a small amount of it and work it with a wet brush. Here you can see the entire process again. The idea with the track marks was something like the tank has passed, it made a small imprint and it crushed the stones underneath it. Plausible? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Finally, I put some bigger stones in place. I made those by crushing a piece of plaster. When the stone disappears from the scene, they are going into the jar of acrylic paste. The bigger things are glued, but the small stuff is not. So, first I wetted the surface with a mist of tension breaker. The isopropanol breaks the surface tension of the water, and now we can flood everything with scenic glue without problems. And now for the cracked earth experiment. I mixed filler, which is the finest dust from the gravel, with Vallejo crackle medium. I think that this medium is meant for paints, but I tried. Worst case scenario, I will put some acrylic water over it. The mix was then poured into the pond and leveled out with the brush. Now let's hope it cracks. The next day began with priming. I will not bother you with video. Take your time and be sure to cover every little spot. I used Ammo by MIG one-shot black primer for the first time. A 0.4mm nozzle on my HNS Evolution and a higher pressure of around 2 bars, and primer straight from the bottle. No problems at all. And it's really dry in 20 minutes. I started airbrushing the grass. A nice green color. Try not to cover everything, but also don't worry too much about the overspray. This will be corrected in the next step. Next was a nice warm red earthy shade. I first addressed the overspray. And then an overall uneven coat was applied. This color was used to give the base color a warmer hue, because the sand color, which is coming next, would look very cold on the black surface. And cold would be cool in a winter scenario, but in the desert, well, you got the idea, right? And here comes the sand color. It says Gelb brown on the bottle, and I went for it. No fancy explanations this time, but as you will see in the end, the color will be completely different. This color was also applied in an uneven pattern over all aspects of the grass. It's time to clean the airbrush and put it in the drawer. It will be brushwork from now on. Here are our 2 colors used so far. And we will add 2 more. A darker brown and an ochre brown. Tap water will be used for thinning. The thinning here is important. Instead of paint, you should prepare more a heavy wash. We will be painting stones. The order of the colors is important. The first is earth brown. And the paint should only alter the appearance of the stone rather than completely covering it. The smaller stones are just picked up with a single brush stroke. You should cover the entire molded stone with this color. Next is darker brown. Again, pick up some of the stones on the ground and put this color into the recesses of the molded rock. See what we are doing? I will use the ochre brown color to explain. The small stones on the ground are derived from the large molded stones in real life, so those big stones should be painted with all the colors used for the small stones. That way they will look natural in this environment. So, after some small stones are covered, you should put that yellowish color on the horizontal plates of the molded stones. And finally, the sand color. Again, some of the stones on the ground and highlights of the molded stones. Are you still with me? I hope so. The colors on the molded rocks were too strong for my taste, so I decided to put on a filter made from the last color, very thin with water. Now I will take a moment to show you another nice channel on YouTube, Metok Models. A very nice guy who does great tutorials and has great ideas. Just take a look.
But since we were using metal wire, it was easy to make those sags look realistic.
I will try those nets myself, that's for sure. Back to work. Finally, some smelly stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, oils and enamels. We will use an enamel filter and some oil brushers. Those are tinned oil paints ready to be used. No cardboard and soaking needed. Just put some on the palette and you are ready to go. Ammo by Mick Odorless Thinner will be the working medium. The filter will be used straight from the bottle, but we must turn the oil paint into a heavy wash. Something like that. Also this time we will work on small sections. The approach here is wet on wet, and this enamel filter dries quite fast. You should cover everything with a coat of filter, except for the grass. You can see how the filter is unifying different colors that were literally shutting out until now. And immediately start to apply the dark brown wash under the stones and around the grass stairs. The blending is automatic, and you can easily control the shadow intensity with the amount of wash applied. Brilliant! The molded stones were treated the same way. Here you can see the difference between the acrylic only part and the enamel / oil treated part. It's up to you to figure out what is what. The difference is huge. I put the diorama in the kitchen oven to speed things up. Let's prepare the highlight color. I used the buff oil brusher straight from the bottle this time. You can imagine the smell when my wife came home, but it was dry in 10 minutes. Me happy, my wife not so much. Nothing special for the final step, just some old good dry brushing to bring out the texture. You don't have to unload the color on the paper like you would with traditional oil paints. Just take it lightly and start by stippling the stones. Then you can start dry brushing. I picked up the grass again with the green color and a brush, just to refresh it. And what are we seeing there? Perhaps a palm tree? The terrain is finished, but there will be a final dusting step with an airbrush when the panzer is installed. Of course, the frame received a few coats of generic acrylic black paint. And now it's really done. And here we have it. The final touch will be the palm tree. I had the idea to show the process in this video, but there was too much footage. So, you will get a full palm tree tutorial next week. And it's not even finished yet. Let's see the final shot. So, if this wasn't a useful video, I really don't know what to do. I would like to thank Bine from Backtobasics for all the support and the gear. Bine, thank you from the heart. Next week you will get the palm tree tutorial. 90% of the work and filming is done, and I need a quick job because on Friday I'm going to Belgrade to attend the Olui New Year's Cup. So, if you are in Belgrade next week, the beer's on me. Until next week, stay healthy, stay cool, and put some glue on the styrene too, if you know what I mean. Bye.